All right, we're back. The thing I was going to ask right before we went to the break was, first of all, CJNG and Sinaloa are in like a war right now.
Well, okay, it depends which faction we're talking about because
All right, let's break this down first.
there's technically like 3 factions of the Sinaloa cartel. You know, it's very fragmented at this point, but let's talk about the main ones, which is El Mayo's faction and El Chapo's faction. We've talked about this on a lot of episodes, but essentially, because El Chapo's faction or the Chapitos, his son's faction, seemed to be really struggling with this infighting, this civil war that broke out following El Mayo's kidnapping and, you know, him landing in the U.S. last summer. Mm-hmm. The Chapitos seemed to be struggling. CG&G, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, aligned with the Chapitos, basically saying, we're going to help you guys win this infighting. If that means then, you know, we have access to trafficking routes and whatever financial gain that they can get out of it once the war is over. To me, when I see something like this, it's telling more a story of absorption, like I said, than being like, we're going to help you win this. And then when you do win this, you guys are CJ&G.
Right.
There's only one, you know, kind of head honcho left within the Chapitos faction, which is Ivan, one of El Chapo's sons. And from what I can tell and from people who I've spoken to in the U.S. government, that is the guy that they want to get right now. Like, if we were to put, you know, make a list of all the most wanted, whether that's, you know, El Mencho, Ivan, Archibaldo, Ryan Wedding, whoever it is, I would say Ivan is the top of their list because that means that they have essentially fully dismantled the Sinaloa cartel. Now, the issue with that, and I keep going over this, is that means that CG&G will essentially have power, or at least this is how I foresee it, in Sinaloa. CG&G right now, I would say, has power over all of the Mexican states. Sinaloa is a bit iffy, right? Because it's being called publicly an alliance, and we have seen videos, and I'm being sent stuff all the time, where you see these CJ&G guys fighting alongside the Chapitos in the mountains. You know, they're shooting and
Fighting alongside.
Mm-hmm. They're going after El Mayo's faction. They're working together, but it seems as though there's obviously a broader agenda here, and that's to completely absorb the Sinaloa cartel, that faction of it at least, which would probably extend into all of it. And I think that this is like a perfect example of that, like the Hydra, right? You cut off one head and two more evil ones grow back, because if that means CJ&G is like the all-powerful cartel, knowing just how violent they are, that's a very, very scary future for Mexico and for any like innocent people who have to live amongst this. Now, I'm sure a lot of people would say, and I understand this, is, well, when there is total control and there's no fighting over territory, we're living in peace. Yes, but that doesn't take away from the fact that there's still so much violence going on, and there are so many people who are being targeted by the very cartel that is in power.
At the same time that this is all going on, though, because like people sometimes, and I'll speak for myself too, we get lost in when we talk about El Chapo's sons because there's multiple scenarios going on. Obviously, El Chapo's in ADX. His other son, Ovidio, is in U.S. custody, and
he's cooperating.
He's cooperating. He is allegedly the guy who helped put together the El Mayo sting.
Yep.
Right. But you have free another son, Ivan, who's in the middle of this whole hot war, whatever you want to call it. Ovidio and Ivan, like what's... Obviously, they're not in communication, I guess, because he's in prison. But are they coming at it from different angles, or are they both working on the same kind of team here?
I'm sure they're working on the same team.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't talk to Ovidio and Ivan that often. But I'm not exactly sure what it looks like. I know that Ivan is essentially constantly on the run. Like, I don't think his life is great right now. Ovidio is openly cooperating, and then like 17 of his family members were led into the US. Remember, we spoke about that last time. Which I thought was so ridiculous, negotiating with terrorists, right?
What is literally now? But like, what is the like? What do the cartels back in Mexico think of his cooperation? Do they think it's a part of?
He's a rat.
Yeah,
He's a bitch, and he's a rat.
Yeah,
of course.
But they support Ivan, even though that's his brother, and they get along.
Well, anyone who's under the Chapitos faction is gonna just continue to work for whatever faction they were already under.
But they may think they're working for rats.
Yeah. I mean, there's not going to be any respect for that. And who knows what Ivan is telling these guys, right?
Well, that's also, you think about it, if anyone were ripe to be recruited into another faction, it'd be the guys that are a little...
on edge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not to mention one of the individuals who was put in charge from CJNG, who was put in charge of this whole alliance. He goes by El Jardinero, the gardener. I'm not sure if I spoke about this last time.
You didn't.
But he basically they call him El Jardinero because he's like to make the mountains flourish and the whole thing. But he has a very loyal following within CJNG. And so this is, I think, why their absorption of power also works very well, because you see like this really strong sense of loyalty and like, I don't know, like patriotism for the leaders of CJNG. And of course you see that for El Mencho, but then you also see it for like right-hand men. So like El Jardinero is one of them. He has a very loyal and strong following to him. And so this is also a very powerful and violent person who now is in charge of this alliance and would likely spearhead whatever this alliance could potentially eventually turn into. But I think that when it comes to like the respect for Ovidio, I mean, just look at any criminal landscape. No one is going to support someone like that.
That's what you would think. Yeah.
And I think that's why his family was able to come into the States, because if they stayed there, they would be dead. I mean, look at El Mayo. He's saying, I'm not talking because he has a lot more to lose. He's got a bunch of family in Mexico still.
What's the latest on his case, El Mayo?
That he pleaded guilty to counts of drug trafficking. I don't know the exact ones. I think it was like 2 counts.
Yeah, we can pull it up.
You can pull up the exact details of it, but pled guilty to that. His lawyer publicly said that he's not going to be talking. He's not going to be giving any names. Like El Mayo's not going to be cooperating. And the thing about Mayo is he actually always was known as like this like man of his word, like traditional, like values. So
values,
like, in the landscape of what we're talking
completely.
about.
It's just funny.
I know it is, because it doesn't add up, right?
Exactly.
But he's saying he's not going to talk. Do I believe that? I don't know. And a lot of people have been asking me this lately, and it almost just seems impossible for him to not talk. Let's see.
Oh, Joe's got it up
here.
here.
Can you search up El Mayo, please?
All right, El Mayo.
Plea deal?
Yeah, that's it. Co-founder of Sinaloa Cartel, Ishmael El Mayo Zambada Garcia, pleads guilty to engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise and racketeering. This is August 25th, 2025, from thejustice.gov. Ismael Zambada Garcia, also known as El Mayo 75 of Sinaloa, Mexico, pleaded guilty today to being a principal leader of a continuing criminal enterprise, the Sinaloa Cartel. The cartel, one of the most violent and powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world, in addition to a racketeer influence and corrupt organization RICO charge. This foreign terrorist committed horrific crimes against the American people. He will now pay for those crimes by spending the rest of his life behind bars in an American prison, said Attorney General Pamela Bondi. Today marks a crucial victory in President Trump's ongoing fight to completely eliminate foreign terrorist organizations and protect American citizens from deadly drugs and violence. Today's plea is a proud moment for the FBI and its partners as the founders of a notoriously violent drug trafficking organization, one that engages in an array of illegal activity, including murder and corruption, face the consequences of their actions, said FBI Director Kash Patel. Yeah.
So something really important to note here is that he's facing life, right?
Yeah.
Mandatory minimum or whatever it is.
He's not looking too good either, so yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, like, don't put that in.
No, it's all right. That's fine.
So he was kidnapped and brought to the U.S. So he was not sent to the U.S. under the U.S.-Mexico extradition treaty. That treaty exists to essentially extradite criminals, Mexican national criminals who have committed crimes against the Americans, like it said in that press release, right? None of these fugitive transfers. So let's talk about El Mayo. It was obviously a kidnapping. Then there was a bunch of guys who were transferred in January. That included Caro Quintero, who was accused of killing DEA agent Kiki Camarena. And then just most recently, a week or two ago, 26 guys, right? Modern day guys. You're not talking about the old capos anymore. All of these people were sent to the U.S. without the extradition treaty paperwork. The extradition treaty paperwork and the agreement, essentially the crux of it is to avoid the death penalty. So none of these guys, if they're being extradited, the death penalty is off the table. Why? This is a rhetorical question that I'm going to answer. Why were all of these individuals sent to the U.S. to face the justice system, not under the extradition treaty, and yet none of them are getting the death penalty? Because the U.S. is looking for information. They don't want these guys dead. Because when Caro Quintero was sent to the U.S., I very openly said, he's not getting the death penalty, even though he could have, because they weren't sent under the death penalty. And I had people say, of course he's going to get the injection. Of course he's getting the death penalty. Why would you do that? Like, this is an oracle of information.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And then it came out just a few weeks ago. None of these guys are getting the death penalty. Most of them are getting life. And that's so much better, right? And then Ovidio, he's probably only going to get like 10 years or something.
Now, what happens at the end of those 10 years? Is he going to stay here?
In the U.S.?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. You think Buddy's going to go on back to Culiacan and live it up?
So we're going to let him stay here. El Chapo's son. He's going to walk out of prison. He's going to live in Westchester County, New York. I don't know if that's where he's going to live. But
I'm getting more like Riverside, California vibes.
So we're just going to let that happen.
Probably. I mean, you guys let his family in. I think 17 family members.
Oh, you can say you guys because you're Canadian. Hey, you're here as our guest. That's nuts. You would think they'd deport his ass and just let the wolves have him.
Not if he gave them a bunch of invaluable information.
If he gives them a bunch of invaluable information, congratulations. Your prize is you don't get life in prison. Now figure it the fuck out. Like,
well, what did you say last time? Crack a few eggs to get the shells?
Crack a few eggs to make an omelet. But I'm saying the omelet's already made. We already made the omelet. You got your 10 years. You get to be out. Go, run, be free. It's, you know, like in the movies when, like, the guy in a prototypical movie, when they, like, nurse the animal back to health. Oh, my God, go, be free. And they let it go, and then, like, a fucking falcon eats it. Like, let that happen.
Yeah.
You had your chance to run away. If the falcon got you, you're not good enough. Why does he got to live here?
So
his dad's already buried in ADX, which I'd rather be dead than be there.
You don't think it's nice?
ADX? That's where they sent that guy, Andy caught. Oh, yeah.
There's no, like, jacuzzi and golf carts?
I don't think so.
Okay, so listen, this is where this becomes very problematic, because President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico has obviously given the U.S. this wide open back door to prosecute these criminals, right?
Yeah, how is that relationship going?
Do that again. Publicly, well, clearly, publicly she keeps saying, we're going to maintain Mexico's sovereignty. We are not allowing any U.S. intervention in terms of dealing with this whole issue.
And she's like, right back here.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
That's horrible for a podcast because no one who's listening could.
Yeah, but if they were watching, I made a move like, yeah, just back it. Park it over.
Shut up and get the fucking.
Behind that car.
Hop in.
Nothing to see here, people.
That's what's happening. And so that's why these guys are being transferred. They're being called fugitive transfers or expulsions. They're expelling. They're not extraditing. They're expelling these guys. Yeah. That's why that's happening without the extradition treaty. But she's saying, no U.S. intervention. But here, you can take them quick. Right before nobody looks,
Right.
And then also there are, like we talked about this before, and it's just so shocking to me how openly those U.S. intelligence planes are flying over Mexico.
We don't do that. There's no U.S. intelligence planes down there.
Bro, I have it on my Twitter.
I know. They're getting awfully careless.
Yeah, to the point where I feel like it could disrupt the integrity of whatever investigations they're conducting. Because if
intelligence? You think they're conducting investigations? They're not the investigating type.
Whatever intelligence they're gathering to be handed over to the investigators.
Got it.
To clarify.
Right.
And so essentially what I think, though, when we look at how the U.S. is negotiating with these guys and sort of giving them, have life, give us information, we can bring your family in, don't worry about it. And you know what, you, Ovidio, we're just going to put you in timeout.
That's nice.
It's a slap in the face to any American who has obviously like lost people or whose lives have been affected by the fentanyl crisis or like the drug crisis. On the other side of that, anyone who was a collateral victim to cartel violence in Mexico. Because I think for a lot of them, I remember when Trump first declared cartels as FTOs in January, and I spoke to so many people and such a broad variety of people in Mexico and from across all regions, and everyone was like, finally, someone is cracking down on the bad guys. And then in practice, that's not what's happening.
It's not.
No. I mean, not if you're negotiating with them. Do you think it is?
All right.
There's like a crackdown, but it's not what like people really like the substantial crackdown they thought.
So you think, and I'm not saying this like to be funny or overgeneralize, but
I think they should have got the death penalty.
With that logic, because we're not chopping their heads off literally, and instead we're just bringing them here and putting them in a cell, it's not the same?
Not at all. I'm a firm believer in capital punishment.
You are.
Especially for someone who has done something inherently, objectively wrong and cost the lives of thousands of people.
Yeah.
People come at me for that all the time. They're like, Katarina, how could you? How could you not? You see half the shit that I've seen and you would be a believer too.
No, I understand what you're saying. I just think that the jump, like in your mind, the jump, and I understand why you're cynical about it, but the jump from being so cynical as to like, well, they're not doing that at all because they're just bringing them here. I mean, they're taking to defend it, they're taking the pieces off the board, they're extracting information from them, and they're giving them no future, with the exception of video. I don't like that, but.
Right. At the same time, I do understand that. It's like, okay, they're getting information, they're going to get trafficking routes, and they're going to gather information to perhaps tackle more individuals. Truth be told, I don't think any of these efforts are going to have like any lasting impacts.
Why?
Because this is like this perpetual beast that will always continue to grow and find new ways to adapt to whatever tactics law enforcement or the US or whoever is using against them, or to try to figure them out, or to try to dismantle them or hinder their operations. Everyone always asks me, like, what's the solution? There is no solution. So
why do you cover it? If there's no solution, why do you cover it if it's not going to end ever?
Because wouldn't you also want a job with job security?
That wouldn't be in my top 1,000.
I'm joking. That's not.
I know.
Yeah, I'm being facetious. The point is that because then you look at the other stories that like are like the women in Juarez story.
You feel like you can help limit the damage?
That can be, you know, there needs to be a stop to that. But in terms of being like, we are going to dismantle every single cartel that we have designated an FTO, it's just like so out of the realm.
You know.
And then also, like, what's the real agenda here? Because then you look at, like, Venezuela and how, like, the real target here is Maduro, and they're using this whole, like, FTO designation to really just go in and, like, drone strike them.
Yeah, it's interesting. That is interesting. I'm not saying he's a good guy, but that is an interesting backdoor tactic for sure.
Yeah. It's so much more beyond just, like, what we see. This is not a black and white topic.
Yes.
It's very nuanced. And so that's why in terms of like discussing solutions or like, will there be an end? That's so beyond my comprehension. And this is what I literally live and breathe all day long. Yeah. So there's no way to simplify this whatsoever.
Where is, with your story, like where's Claudia Scheinbaum with this? I would think this is the kind of thing that she would draw attention to if she's not owned. No. Why not?
Because this is the type of story that she would probably bring up in her morning press conference and say, unless there's proof, unless Katarina can show me who's killing these women and who's buying them, it's not happening. Because I think that the missing and murdered women problem in Juarez should have been declared a national emergency. I think something like this should be declared a national emergency.
Yeah.
And we know it is happening, but she doesn't want to bring that negative attention. I think the only way that she would perhaps address it or like really kind of hammer down on it would be about the American buyers. Because she also, you know, big proponent of the fact that like a majority of arms that are used at Mexican crime scenes come from the U.S. You know, there was that whole lawsuit. Yeah, the whole thing.
Yep.
So that if she's like, oh yeah, our cartels are providing it, look who's buying them.
That's what
Those
I'm
are
saying.
The real villains. She would say that. And like, yeah, I agree to an extent, but I'm not entirely sure that she would want to accept like what's happening on the southern side of the border.
But like the whole country, and she knows this, the whole country thinks and knows that the fucking place is run by these violent organizations fighting each other and buying off politicians and killing the ones they don't like. You would think that you're constantly looking through, and I hate to put it this way, but you're constantly looking through, you know, a trove to find a piece of treasure that you can say, oh my God, if I put this one out there, people can't ignore this. You know what I mean? Something that's so bad and so beyond the realm. Like you say to people, look, they're selling all the drugs to Americans. And the average Mexican goes, yeah, whatever. But you go, look, they're killing your own pregnant girls and selling the kids, and Americans are buying them. That's like and you shouldn't look at it this way, to be clear, but like if you are trying to sell something politically as like, can we please look at this? What the fuck else? How are you going to get something more serious or better or horrible? You know what I mean?
Well, we'll see if she says something about it. She brought up my reporting, I think, once before, and it was like, show me proof. And I was like, okay.
Hit me on Telegram, bitch. You were saying though a little while ago, right, when we were going to break and we got off it after we came back, but they might be doing like even organ harvesting at some CJNG.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, though, like, because that's another story that I've been thinking about for a while, right? Okay. And when it first broke, it was like all the news and everyone was talking about it. And there was a lot of speculation around what was happening at these camps, who was running it, why authorities weren't like deeply looking into it and investigating it the way they should. And then also the mothers who had found it and brought it to the public attention were vilified by the cartels and the Mexican federal government, saying essentially that these women are making this up and they're sticking their noses in places that they don't belong. Super bad, okay? But now, sitting on this story, it's like there were so many personal belongings there. We talked about that last time I was here. And there were like no bodies. There was some indication of human remains and ovens that people were being burned in. But if I really look at it now with hindsight, it appears as though that this was like an operation for, organ harvesting. The training area was very rudimentary and certainly not what I had seen in other CJNG like actual training camp sites. So, and the people who seem to have been victims there and some who were survivors, like their testimonies, it doesn't add up to you're going to come here to become a Sicario and fight for us type of thing. So yeah, this goes very deep. And so those sites, that site, the Rancho Seguirre in particular, tied to CJNG, and now these infants are also tied to CJNG. So clearly there is no limit in terms of what they're doing to run their business. And that's very worrisome. And it also worries me too that it's like, okay, yeah, the US is cracking down on the whole cartel thing, whatever, but we're not seeing much of a crackdown on CJNG. We're seeing sanctions, visas being revoked.
Oh, that's nice. We're revoking visas.
Woo, what a feat.
What a win.
Yeah, but it's not like, no one's being kidnapped like El Mayo was, but I guess it's kind of like one step at a time. But I also don't think that like that El Mayo capture was even like the best, because then it led to so much fucking fallout in Sinaloa. And like I said last time, really feel for those people.
Why don't, the thing I keep thinking in the back of my mind is like this whole power struggle between at least aspects of Sinaloa and CJNG, who's the new bad boy in town kind of thing, where they're just trying to eat everything around them, and they're fucking crazy and doing insane rackets that are sick even by cartel standards. Why aren't people who are actually truly loyal cartel members of the Sinaloa cartel using their contacts, even if they're corrupt contacts, to get some of this information inside baseball about what CJNG's doing back, so that they can get their enemy off the playing field, like get them cracked down on. You know what I mean? Sick the fucking cops on them. Like, why aren't they doing that? There's so much to work with here.
Okay, could be happening, right? But then also at the same time, with the amount of leverage that CJNG holds, who is going to have the balls to go and try to fuck them over? Because I feel like you go and try to fuck over CJNG, you get fucked double. Let's look at it realistically. Look at what they're doing. I mean, if you can still kind of work business as usual and you kind of have, their blessing to keep operating, you're not at war.
Right.
Just lay low.
Right. I got to think at this point, someone like El Mencho, I don't... Who would be more wanted than him in the world?
Maduro.
Yeah, I don't think Maduro has the power he does.
Yeah, but they want him bad.
I know they do, but I'm saying literally. I forget what they want and who.
Let's talk about the characters here.
Let's put chess pieces on the table. Mencho runs CJNG, the fastest growing disease in Mexico, the most powerful cartel somehow already, doing the most insanely sick things that we've seen cartels do ever, which once again, that's really saying something.
After Los Zetas, for sure.
I mean, he's got to be the most wanted person on earth.
I mean, I don't
think... He should be.
Yeah, I mean, he's up there for sure. Yeah, he's like a fucking mythological figure at this point, because then you always have these rumors too that is he dead or alive or what's going on.
Is he just living in complete hiding in the hills or something? Obviously, they have no idea where he is, but
yeah, I think so.
You would assume this guy's not living in the fucking middle of Mexico City.
No, right. I think it's definitely it's probably going to mirror the whole Bin Laden situation, some compound,
Yeah. No, I would assume that's probably about what it is. It's just what about the fact that we've declared them FTOs and now maybe Shine Bomb's letting some people in through the back door? Have you heard any information about, I don't know, U.S. intelligence having more resources to try to find someone like this? I mean, it's like finding a needle in a haystack, but...
If you track where those intelligence planes are flying, they certainly have their sights set. I just don't think that they have the support of Mexican forces, or the government, rather.
To take out El Mencho if they got him?
Or whoever it is, whether it's like El Mencho or Ivan or Wedding. Ryan Wedding.
Yeah, we'll get to Ryan Wedding.
Yeah, because he's up there too.
Yeah, they wouldn't have the support of the Mexican government to take out El Mencho. That seems...
I'm sure that El Mencho, I mean, look how long he's gone without being captured. I don't think there's probably a single person who's not received something from him.
Right.
To ensure that he's pretty untouchable. So... do I think that there are people who know where he is? Of course. But I think that would be a big, bloody operation.
Something like the operation you're reporting on, though, with the infants being stolen from the pregnant mothers and them killed. Is there any way that something like that would be happening within CJNG without having the blessing of El Mencho personally?
See, I don't know. I was thinking about this too. It's very hard to say. I honestly don't know. And I asked a few people that question. And I don't know if he knows that's going on or not. That's really hard to say. And at the level it's happening, where it's like just like the dozens, I say just, but like that's too many for what this is. But it's hard to say if he's in the loop about this.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. And like a lot of people are unsure about this. So yeah.
What's the leadership structure around him like? Do we know anything about it? Like, do we know other players, like who the number 2 is, who the number 3 is?
Yeah, and I talked about El Jardinero. He's definitely up there. There's this another guy sort of emerging. They call him El Yogur. I think we talked about this last time.
El Yogur.
Yeah,
I don't
the
remember
yogurt.
That. The yogurt. I feel like I would remember that. I don't know if we talked about that.
Isn't that such a weird alias?
Yeah, that's not what I would want to be called.
Me neither.
Like if I had worked that hard to rise up to the top of this organization, call me like the Bat or something like that.
The Bat?
Yeah.
Like the Batman?
Yeah, no, like the Batman. Yeah.
I'm thinking like the Bat, like the COVID Bat.
Yeah, or like Batman, something like that. Don't call me yogurt. Like that's kind of gay. You know what I mean? Like, hey, yogurt, get over here. Like,
It's like really like the shittiest alias possible.
Yeah.
But he's fucking powerful as hell.
Not powerful enough.
So the understanding and knowledge surrounding who's high up in the CJNG hierarchy, it's quite known. And it also became more clear with this CJNG Chapitos alliance, because then right-hand men were sent out to certain regions to conduct these operations and to make sure everyone was playing ball, right? So that became very clear. Now, do I think that there's really focus on these right-hand men? No. And there certainly should be more, because if at any point in time Mencho dies or Mencho gets taken out, I think it's more likely that he dies than he actually gets captured. Yeah. One of these guys is likely going to take over.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if one of these guys is even more violent and takes it to the next level. So those sights need to be set on who is the potential next kingpin and what they're capable of. Yeah, sorry, I can't get over how funny like the yogurt thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like that's also been a criticism of some of the strategy that seems to be playing out with Trump post like FTO designation, where he's going like the kingpin strategy, so to speak. Because again, it's like you're cutting off one head, but there's 40 heads.
Yeah, and then there's so much collateral damage that comes out of it, which is just, that's what pisses me off. Because it's like, oh, we got Mayo, now everyone go figure it out for yourselves. Fight amongst yourselves. Doesn't matter who dies in the process. It's like invasion without the invasion.
Yeah. Now, Sinaloa has still been doing like a lot of shit. I saw you put out a video where they were dropping like 20 bodies off a bridge or something like that.
Oh,
What was the story there?
Infighting is not. I don't know because I see the bodies all the time. I'm not exactly sure which one.
You don't know which body? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's literally constant. And I know that influencers lately have been targets of major attacks. I'm not going to be able to find it amongst all the piles of bodies.
Yeah,
but influencers lately, or people with like heavy online presence, they're like really facing the brunt of it because a lot of these people were heavily aligned or laundering money. We saw this happen with El Macabélico, singer, rapper.
Okay.
Pull him up, El Macabélico? He was just sanctioned by the U.S. for giving 50% of all of his revenue from Apple's streaming to the Sinaloa cartel.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You saw that, right?
Yeah.
And then all his stuff was removed on Apple Music and stuff like that. And I can only imagine like who's next in this realm. Because this is another thing, right? People will also come for like these artists and be or YouTubers or whoever it is.
Yep. There it is. Treasury sanctions Mexican rapper El Macabélico over alleged cartel ties. Treasury said Ricardo Hernandez Merdano, who goes by the stage name El Macabélico, is a narco rapper associated with the Cartel del Noreste. His concerts and events are used to launder money on behalf of the organization, according to the Treasury, which said at least 50% of his royalties from streaming platforms, there it is, are sent directly to the cartel. Fucking crazy.
Yeah. And so when I posted this, what a lot of people were saying was like, Peso Pluma's next, Fuerza Regida's next, like all these really famous figures. And it wouldn't surprise me. And whether they're doing it out of, I want to make more money, or it's forceful. Either give us revenue, streaming revenue, or you're dead. And we've seen violence against artists like this since the freaking 80s, for a long time. I mean, like Chalino Sanchez was the notorious case of this, where, he gets the note. You've probably seen it. He's on stage, he gets the note, wipes the sweat, and sings, and people say that note was a death threat that if he kept singing.
Yeah, that's like a famous meme.
Yeah, it's universal at this point. Everyone knows it.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of funny, though.
A lot of artists are very much become targets of this because they have access to so much money, and they have access to so much money laundering potential. So,
to say nothing of cultural influence, by the way.
Oh, yeah, that too, of course. And I talk about that all the time. I get a lot of heat for that. People say, like, it's not like that's the music isn't the problem and the cultural influence, like, it's not a thing. It certainly is.
Sometimes, yeah. Read the lyrics are sending a message.
They're always sending a message, whether that's consciously or not, right? Yeah. People are absorbing that, especially people who are in positions where they may be considering joining this life, or they're already surrounded by it, or they have access to being a part of this. Yeah. And it promotes like a sense of like it's like patriotic to a sense, like loyalty to this cartel.
Yep. National anthems, if you will.
For the shadow government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of fuck-uppery. Like, there's always some other angle where they have control. Like, we all talk about the government. We all talk about law enforcement. We talk about the military. We talk about the context in the United States. We talk about the organizations who support this and buy it on the other side of the United States. And then there's always a new estuary where it's like, oh, by the way, yeah, they got that too. That's where your idea of, like, you're not going to end this shit cynically. No. It's like,
because they aren't drug cartels anymore. Mm-hmm. This is an organized crime group through and through, a foreign terrorist organization working internationally, and the financial means go so much further beyond drugs.
Yeah.
Obviously, which was the headline of our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully the story that continues to go out there, because that goes so much more beyond fentanyl.
What's the latest with your home country, though, and the implications of the cartels. I know you've been reporting on that a bunch. Obviously, Canada, you were one of the first people to talk about some of the fentanyl centers there and how that was going down. And
and everyone was like, bullshit.
And then it was totally true.
Yeah.
What was it? They're like, you were the one who told me about the guy who was like, yeah, we could stop maybe 1% of it or something.
Oh, like they check less than 1% of everything that comes into the ports.
So what's the, how is this all blowing over to there now?
What came up the other day, something came up the other day in our there was like a bust, I'm pretty sure. But the key here is that our border czar said, I have no control. Pardon?
Tom Homan?
No, Canada's. Because Canada followed suit with U.S. because of the whole tariff threat. So we implemented a fentanyl czar and a border czar. Canada's border czar said, I have no power over law enforcement or like the border, like CBSA, which is like our border patrol. So like, don't look at me. Like I literally think he said like word for word.
It's like a South Park episode.
Yeah. And it's like,
so I'm not in my department. Okay.
And I just thought that was so ridiculous because, you know, now that I did all this reporting and then the administration came out saying, oh yeah, you know, it's all coming through Canada, whatever. And then a lot of people were like, especially people who didn't follow me from the beginning were like, she's pushing like Trump's agenda. And it's like, no, I was saying this like actually, no.
Trump's agenda is, if in this case it's like stop drugs, that should be everyone's agenda.
Yeah, I agree.
It's fucking crazy.
Duh. Yeah. But anyways, so there was this case, Upinder Singh. He got picked up by DEA.
Upinder Singh. Mm-hmm. That's not a Mexican.
No, it's not. And I had been saying this, and they called him Thanos because he was like collecting all the, I don't know, like, is that Avengers or something?
It's one of them.
Yeah, so
they're calling him Thanos.
Yeah, does Thanos collect the stones or something? Yeah.
Joe says yes.
Okay, I don't know. I only know Black Widow.
I know he collects the stones for his.
Yeah.
And so Upinder went by Thanos because he was basically conducting a lot of the transnational relations, basically, you know, collecting stones like countries. So he was the one in charge of essentially communications between Canadian organized crime groups, U.S., particularly California-based organized crime groups, and the cartel, and running all the precursors and the fentanyl and the meth between all three countries.
How was he doing this? Like, what method? Do we know sources and methods here?
Trucking companies, the ports. It was mostly land and, you call it maritime? No. Yeah.
No, that's right.
Sea? Land and sea?
Yeah.
So, yeah. That was what his whole thing was. And then DEA got him.
Nice job, DEA. Love that for you.
Gold stars for you. And so this was actually like really tied all my reporting together because this is what I had been saying, that these South Asian gangs based in Canada had been operating with the cartels and building these relationships since prior to the legalization of marijuana because BC Bud was the best marijuana, and Canadian organized crime groups, particularly South Asian ones, Brothers Keepers, United Nations, and not the United Nations that, like, you know, is the international organization. Yeah. Well, you said that last time.
I wouldn't put it past them, but you know.
You said that same thing last time.
I'm just saying.
You were like, the United Nations?
Yeah, listen. Hey, that's where my head goes.
So basically, he was conducting all of these operations, and some people in organized crime have told me, no, he wasn't. He was not the big dog. But in terms of a DEA Canadian, DEA RCMP collaborative capture, this to them was like their big dog capture. But as we know, or as I perceive, a lot of the times when we're getting these press releases or getting this information of we got the head honcho, or we hit this huge drug bust, or we stopped this at the border, it's very much blown out of proportion. And I can really validate that because any time that I have reported on something like this, I get messages almost immediately from sources within organized crime being like, Katarina, for fuck's sakes, this doesn't even touch the surface. Okay, I'll tell you who the real players are, or you know who it really is. Yeah. And so, but at the end of the day, it tied in what I had been saying, and it further showed that whatever efforts that have been implemented since I started reporting on this last year until now are not really effective. It's all still going on essentially business as usual. And it doesn't help that our borders are said, well, I don't know what I'm doing here. I have no power.
Canadian thing I've heard in a while.
Actually, can you pull that up? Canadian Border
I
Czar.
almost want to see him saying this.
Canadian Border Czar says, I don't control RCMP. It was something like that.
I hope he said A while he said this. I don't control that A.
We don't even say that.
Listen,
when have you ever heard me say that?
I've watched enough South Park. That's what they say.
Yeah, see, Canada's fentanyl czar.
We don't have a video of it.
So Sam Cooper.
I have no authority.
Sam Cooper is a great Canadian crime journalist.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Well, you weren't lying. All right, so Ottawa's newly appointed fentanyl czar told U.S. officials in Ottawa he has no authority to influence Canadian federal police or border agencies, according to an official with knowledge of the relevant meetings. For U.S. enforcement experts, the admission underlined what they describe as the emptiness of Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney's high-profile pledges to crack down on transnational fentanyl production and trafficking by Chinese and Mexican syndicates, and underscored systemic failures in Canada's response to cartels exploiting the nation's ports, borders, and infrastructures. Ottawa's response this year to President Donald Trump's threat of fentanyl interdiction tariffs and making them the 51st state, including the high-profile czar position, promises to join cross-border gang task forces, and pledges to strengthen border security, has been described by U.S. and Canadian enforcement sources as largely performative, lacking both real authority and the baseline cooperation with U.S. counterparts needed to address Canada's vulnerabilities.
So imagine the borders are being like, yeah, I actually don't have any control over the border.
Oh, yeah. Here's what he said. He said, quote, listen, I don't have the RCMP. I don't tell the RCMP what to do. I listen to what RCMP, CBSA, and other police services have to say, but I have no authority to direct them or ask them to do anything, one U.S. source recalled.
So imagine if Tom Holman said that, people would be like, so what the fuck are you doing here then, right?
Yeah, go clean the bathrooms. Like, get the fuck out of here.
But this, it didn't even really make a dent in like the Canadian public perception of what's going on, which sucks.
Yeah.
Again, like I've said before, there's been like the fentanyl overdose death crisis in Canada is really, really bad. And so this isn't just some like hoo topic. It has actual implications in the livelihood of a lot of people and the lives. So essentially, there were these very performative actions that were taken by the Canadian government, I think significantly more than by the Mexican government, to appease the U.S. That did absolutely nothing. Perfect example here.
Politicians being performative, I've never heard of it.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. So they're... In your opinion, then, based on the fact that there's no organization here whatsoever north of the border out over there in Canada, we have our own problems here, obviously, but up there as well, like they're totally
it's business as
no
usual.
Clothes.
Yeah, and any of my sources in Canadian law enforcement, they're always kind of bitching to me about it. They're just like, it's the same shit.
And it's growing now.
And it's growing. Yeah. We have no resources. We don't have the manpower. They don't want to look into shit. They don't even really want to cooperate with the U.S. Like, we don't even know how to stop this. And these are some guys who have so much intel and information, and they can't do anything with it. Right. And I can imagine that would be very frustrating. And then I can imagine it'd be frustrating when you have me. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm going into the fentanyl lab run by the Chinese and the Mexican cartels and the Indian guys in Canada. And then everyone being like, lies. doesn't
Right.
exist. And then Canadian law enforcement is literally calling me and messaging me being like, oh my God, yes, we've been saying this and nothing is being done.
So it's safe to assume then, minus the obvious immediate concern that more Canadians are now, I mean, fentanyl death is rising. It's a huge problem that's increasing, and that obviously is a terrible tragedy for the population. But it's also safe to say that because of the success of the labs that the cartels have been able to establish over the last few years they're establishing a lot more, and they're doing it with impunity.
Yes, 100%. Exactly that. Mic drop.
Like, where are they doing it, though? Like, in the foothills of the mountains, or are they doing it, like, in the back of the 7-Eleven?
It's in a lot of, like, farmland regions where there's, like, large properties. It's also in suburban areas where it like a typical trap house. And that's been happening for a long time in Canada. Is that not?
You have those in Canada?
Yep, trap houses.
You got trap queens, too? Joe, like what I did there. God damn. Get your shit together, Canada.
Yeah, I agree.
We got to get our shit together here, to be fair. But, like, really, come on.
And it's funny because when you ask me about, like the capital punishment, and it's like, yeah, we do not have capital punishment in Canada. And so anytime I say, we got to bring that shit back because you have, like, child predators just walking free 3 days after they like 10 girls under 14, people are like, how could you say that?
Yeah, this is one of the, and I understand your perspective because you see the worst of the worst and you see the so clearly guilty people. If you're talking broadly about capital punishment, the reason I have been against it is because, we got the best justice system here in America, but it's got its flaws like everywhere else, and it falls short sometimes, and there are an inordinate number of people. It's not like 0.1%. It is more than that. There are people who are found guilty of crimes in bad cases where they didn't do it, and they're on death row. And sometimes a lot of times they've gone to their death and been killed. And like the other side of that is, I'm like, dude, if you get sentenced to life in prison, I think that's almost worse because you don't know how long you're going to live. Your freedom's completely taken away. I mean, if you're sent to somewhere like Supermax, you'd rather be dead every second of every day. The issue there then also becomes, though, it's like cynically, you're like, oh, so our tax dollars are paying to keep them alive.
And you just get to like live kind of in safety. I mean, I understand the nuance to it, okay? And I know that a part of me, like in the heat of the moment when I'm covering really tragic cases, I'm like, just kill this person.
Right.
And I know that that's not good, okay? But I've seen so many cases go without justice.
Yeah.
Particularly towards just vulnerable victims, that I'm like, are you kidding me? And especially in Canada, it's such a problem because then we have catch and release. Like, you bring the guy in, oh, he did this horrible thing, he's back out on the streets. And
Didn't you just point out one of those where there was a catch and release? What was that? It was really sick.
It was really bad. Oh, the guy, no, this wasn't a catch and release. The guy, I think in Nova Scotia, which is like the east coast of Canada, who murdered and cut up like a teenage girl, and then he went to jail for I don't know some years, and now he's out in the public.
Out.
Yeah, I said that like a Canadian actually just now, but yeah, he's out.
Oh.
But see, that's
a disgrace.
But see, that's what I mean, and I think
disgrace.
that also like evokes like a really strong emotion in me where I'm like, well, fuck, you know what? If we're not gonna even lock him up, like just end it, right? So that's where that's coming from. We're seeing just like injustice after injustice. And that, of course, still exists in the US. But I think that the level of like impunity and lack of oversight in Canada and Mexico has made me more passionate about it after seeing so many time and time again. And we talked about this in the first episode of that little girl who was beaten to death by her stepmother. And I was just like, that traumatized the fuck out of me. How many times do we see this shit happening over and over again? Like, how many times am I going to be on your show and be like, it just keeps getting worse, right? We started with that little girl, and now here we are talking about young pregnant women being murdered for their babies to be sold to Americans.
No, I hear you completely, and like the the hypocritical side of like an argument with mine is that I see a story like Cain Velasquez, and I'm like, good for you, bro. And I'm sick that didn't he get sentenced to like 5 years in prison or something for that?
Yeah.
Just fucking crazy. Because like, but again, like that guy was obviously guilty. You know what I mean? And then it's like, what about another case where the person's not? And that's where my other argument comes in, the initial one I had, and I'm like, fuck. But, you know.
Yeah, in a
Cain
perfect
Velasquez,
world.
for people, he was the UFC fighter who tried to kill the guy who sexually abused his son. And
Yeah, it was 5 years.
yeah. And like, shout out to him. But please go
Honestly, yeah. I forget what I was going to say.
ahead. Sorry. Yeah,
No, but that is. Oh, in an ideal world, that you wouldn't have people facing that type of capital punishment that are, you know, innocent, or that there's like any morsel of a doubt. But also in a perfect world, you wouldn't have criminals walking freely or living their lives with any level of normalcy after having
Right.
ruined someone's life.
Right. There has to be
I
an
don't think
enormous
that's
price
fair.
to pay.
And I think that when you increase the price, you disincentivize the crime from happening.
That is another, yeah.
Because in Canada, the crime rate is really bad. Like random stranger attacks, violent ones.
You've mentioned, though, several times today, a guy that you and I talked about off camera, and I want to get to some of the other things you're going to be doing here, which I'm really psyched for you. I think it's going to be really cool. But you keep talking about Ryan Wedding.
Yes.
Who's actually a story I'm very, very out of the loop on. But
And a lot of people are, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous to me.
tell people who he is.
Okay, let's pull him up, because Ryan Wedding, Canadian Olympic snowboarder,
He went from the slopes to the other slopes.
to the other slopes, who is now a drug kingpin operating in Mexico and very, very well aligned with the Chapitos faction of the Sinaloa cartel.
How? How did this happen?
Yeah, okay, well, let's...
Yeah, there he is. Former Olympian, wanted for running transnational drug enterprise and ordering several murders, added to FBI's list of 10 most wanted fugitives. U.S. Department of State offering a reward of up to $10 million for capture. Former Olympic snowboarder and Canadian national Ryan Wedding, 43, has been added to the FBI's 10 most wanted list. Achille Davis, the assistant director in charge of FBI's Los Angeles field office, announced today during a press conference in Westwood. Dick Davis, that is what it's called, was joined by law enforcement partners with the United States Department of State, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Federal Policing, the Los Angeles Police Department, the DEA, Los Angeles, and U.S. Attorney's Office, Washington, D.C. Ryan Wedding, whose aliases include El Jefe, Giant, Public Enemy, James Conrad King, and Jesse King, was born in Thunder Bay, Canada, and competed in the giant slalom snowboarding competition during the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, Utah. At present, Wedding is wanted for allegedly running a transnational drug trafficking network that routinely shipped hundreds of kilograms of cocaine from Colombia through Mexico and Southern California to Canada and other locations in the United States, and for orchestrating multiple murders and an attempted murder in furtherance of these drugs crimes. Wedding's placement on the top 10 list marks the 535th addition to FBI's list of notorious... Okay, I don't need to read that.
Yeah. So essentially, this guy, he comes from Thunder Bay, which is in Ontario, Canada, on the East Coast. And Thunder Bay has always been known kind of for, it has a crime problem, a drug problem, but it's small.
Mm-hmm.
And he then allegedly went to Colombia, like after his Olympic career, got in with some people, started drug trafficking, just went full, let's see how we can move this product, was so good at it, went to Mexico, and the Chapitos were like, you're really good at this, let's bring you on. And he's very well protected by them. Now, source of mine in organized crime, criminal source, not trust me, bro.
Oh, is this a guy we were talking... Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I like this guy. He's funny.
Yeah, me too. It kind of scares me, but I feel like that's what he wants.
Yeah. Hey, look, you got to get your sources where you get them.
Yeah.
But anyway, source of yours.
Has told me just how violent Wedding is. So what he will do is fly out like to Mexico, Chinese businessmen and Chinese people or anyone really involved in the drug trade and be like, you're going to work for me. We're going to use your trucking company, or you're going to put up some sort of shell company to launder our money. And it's not a question. It's a either yes or he literally yes.
Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.